Day 4. As I stepped out from the tree line, I nervously looked around. The events of the previous day made me nervous to return to the Grand Plains so soon. And so, I took this chance to go on a journey. It's good to explore the parts of the map that not many venture to. I walked on through the night. Morning light started to break through the trees and creep over the cliffs as I made my way across the strange water pools at a place known as the Whistling Columns. Rock formations that made even me feel small started to make an appearance as I made my way to the beach. And they only got more impressive. Strange little crabs also dotted the shoreline, many running from the giant that was suddenly walking on their sands. The morning light eventually started to bring out the scars left from the fights of the previous day. Eventually I saw greenery up ahead, and suddenly the expansive pastures of Green Valley were laid out before me. This young aloe knew we were of no threat to each other and was being very vocal about it. This dialer was also being very vocal, and yet trying to stay hidden at the same time. A Utaranus keeps watch over his nest, having spotted something over to his left. It seems he spied a Apatosaurus, although this one seemed to be just out for a wander. Greetings, fellow herbivore. I made my way along the river below Green Hills, looking for a suitable place to cross. Well, good to know there's nothing lurking in there. Sometimes the urge to announce your presence to anyone who might be listening gets the better of you. But no one was listening this time. This little stego decided to take an alternative route rather than the safer one. But don't worry, he's fine, and happily ran off towards his destination. surroundings were starting to look familiar again. Before I knew it, I was back in the Grand Plains. But had I returned too soon? Almost like a mythical welcome, a Draco Viper took an interest in me, swooping overhead a couple of times. This sleepy aloe pack were possibly preparing for a nightly hunt. Sometimes you forget to just sit and take it all in. So I sat. And just enjoyed the rare quiet of the starlit plains. Reality hit me again though as I headed down to the river. There was trouble. It seems like a Apatosaurus and a Suchomimus are having a bit of a face-off. Which had turned into a standoff because of the Sucho's ability to retreat to the water. The Giga, who could swim about as well as a brick, makes the wise decision of not venturing in after the Sucho. Eventually, the Giga decides their luck will be better elsewhere. Down below the waterfall, I hear some strange sounds coming from the water. It looks like a couple of mosasaurs are trying to leap up the cliff, and then they can move, although painfully slowly, up towards the river. I continue on towards Young Grove. The landscape starts to change as I near it. Oh, hello, Mr. Acro. Must be a good daydream you're having. Watch what eyes lurk in the water. It seems so quiet here though. Besides the noisy critters, of course. After stopping for a quick snack, I start to make my way out of the area. A thick layer of fog starts to form as I make my way back. And spine-chilling noises come from the water. As I turn the corner at the top of a waterfall, I learn of what fate befell the second mosasaur. They are so vulnerable on land, and it's unfortunate that a hungry Tyrannotitan happened to cross their path. After a quick drink at the river, I leave the Tyrannotitan to finish their meal. A young griffin appears out of the fog, likely learning to fly. You'll get the hang of it soon, little guy. This chatty Kalenkin was probably looking for some food to scavenge. A Rex pair shows off after earning a kill. The plains were becoming more active again. I continued wandering, and later night fell, and the fog lifted. But the night brought with it new dangers. It looked like these gigas had gotten bored of sitting by their kill, and they were alerted to the sound of me walking nearby. Wishing for once that the fog was still around, I start to head away towards the trees. The fog would have provided better cover. These were a stronger, more robust species of giga than the one I saw by the river earlier, and they were in a pair. I've faced apex pairs before, but something about this duo gave me a wrong feeling. I made it to the trees, but they didn't stop their pursuit. Eventually, I knew I had no choice but to turn and fight. A wrong key pressed, which could have cost me the fight. Their onslaught of constant bites was wearing me down quickly, so I knew there was only one thing to help save me. if I could land it right. Once again, a well-timed stomp attack saved my life. I released some of the adrenaline coursing through me with a roar of victory. GG Giggers, you're powerful, but my will to survive is even more so. After a drink at the river, I headed into the trees to rest and heal. Not long later, I was alerted to the sound of approaching footsteps. However, it was only a pair of young aloes, probably on their way to young grow for some quests. After a quick snack, I decided to hide myself and heal some more. Whoever that was, they weren't afraid to announce themselves. The weather changed quickly from clear skies to fog and rain. I welcomed this, however. The sound of the storm would help mask my footsteps, and the fog would help to hide me. So I took this chance to make a move, as many dinos could come through here. I was considering heading to the same spot before to finish healing, but instead I decided to head back up the cliff, to the other side of the Grand Plains River. You wouldn't think that this particular spot would be any safer, but you'd be surprised at how little others come through here. Once I'd finished healing, I moved along the river. The storm was still powering through. I decided to take a little detour away from the plains. This is a popular nesting site, but I'm nowhere near ready for that. So after a snack and a look around, I head back. It was time to cross. I was lucky again, as there was nothing wanted to nibble my toes in the water. As I walked across the open grassland, the fog lifted, the clouds parted, and the sun began to shine. As the weather brightened, so did my spirits. As I walked by Crater, I decided to have a peek in. I didn't plan on heading down there today, but I was feeling a bit nosy. Well, enough dino watching. I continued heading towards Wilderness Peak. My spine tingled as I heard the growls coming from a nearby giga pair. Thankfully, they were more focused on heading into Crater, maybe to compete for territory. I didn't really take into account that the terrain would be a lot tougher to deal with up the mountain. At least, for a big dino like me. I headed to the pond after a tough climb, but unbeknownst to me, this pond was occupied. And they were ready to strike when something strayed too close. A Deinosuchus, tough, bulky, armoured, and a crushing bite. This will be one dino that they will not get their jaws around. It was a short tussle, but the damage had been done. It was close to a server restart, and I had had my fill of water, so I left the Deinosuchus be after they didn't pursue the fight any further. Not without a bit of showing off, of course. After the server restarted, it was time to leave. I headed back down, very carefully. This side of the plains seemed deserted. As soon as I moved towards the center, I heard thundering footsteps heading my way. This fight wasn't for me, though. This was two giant carnivores fighting for territory. Their calls rang throughout the area. A Tyrannotitan and a Carcharodontosaurus, already bleeding heavily from their wounds, were battling tooth and claw for the Grand Plains to call their own. It looks like the Carcharodontosaurus was backing down. Then, with one final burst of energy, the Carcharodontosaurus seized their chance to catch the Titan off guard. As with most battles, there'll be one who suffers defeat. However, there is not always a victor. These two giants were wounded too heavily from the fight to survive. The plains were very quiet after that. I decided to head away from the plains and make my way towards the savanna grasslands, where my journey began what seemed like a long time ago. By the time I got there, night was upon me once again. A couple of curious Ceratosaurus were hovering nearby. And they did end up following me. They did attempt to fight, which amounted to nothing, because they slept during the fight numerous times. I reminded them of the server rule, in which this indicates a failed hunt. And after that, we both went about our ways. I planned my route to head up through the hot springs, along Desolate Pass, and then back through Sharptooth Marsh. my rather large self, the marsh was proving challenging to get through, but I made it work. The final part that would lead me back to the Grand Plains was a long, straight path under the hill, which would prove very dangerous if I was met with any carnivores. Fortunately, it was quiet today. The Grand Plains seemed to be bustling with activity when I made my way back through. These Deinosuchus felt like showing off and made a threatening advance. I knew they were probably just testing me or wanting to look tough, so I responded in a nonchalant way. I eventually made my way back to Young Grove, which also seemed to have a lot going on there. A friendly young Spino called to me as they ran by, probably just looking for some new quests to do as they grew. Greetings, fellow Longneck. Although there was a lot of activity here, it still seemed somehow peaceful. Most were just minding their own business whilst they quested and grew. The friendly young Argentinosaurus accompanied me for a snack. There were also a few young raptors running around. Under the watchful eyes of an older Spino, I decided to head towards a place known as Triad Falls and maybe log out there for the day. Whilst I grabbed some berries along the way, I came across these two very small and rather adorable Rex siblings. How could I shoo away these two when they sounded as cute as that? Short answer, I couldn't, and most definitely wouldn't. Today wasn't full of battles and glory, but somehow the journey itself, the miles travelled, the landscapes crossed, and the small moments along the way are what makes the day worthwhile. My path will continue tomorrow. For now, it's time to let this weary giant rest, and I log off listening to the Rex siblings still playing and questing nearby.